Before we begin, drop in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. By the time this is finished, you will never think about a roadside tavern the same way again. There are structures in American history that functioned as two things simultaneously, one visible, one not. The visible thing was ordinary. A business, a stopping place, a service rendered to travelers in exchange for coin. The invisible thing required the visible thing to survive, because the invisible thing could only persist in a location that gave people a reason to arrive and no particular reason to leave quickly. The Dunsmore Tavern at the Glade Creek Crossroads in Stone County, Missouri, operated in exactly this way for an indeterminate period before the autumn of 1878, when the nature of the invisible thing was finally established by a Taney County circuit judge named Erasmus Hollowell, who spent 4 days reviewing the physical evidence gathered from the tavern's property, and then wrote, in his summary order to the Stone County Court, the following sentence: "The court finds that the structure and its appurtenances were maintained for purposes inconsistent with any lawful commercial operation, and that the full extent of those purposes cannot, in the present state of the physical evidence, be determined." That last clause, "cannot be determined," is the most important sentence in the entire record of the Dunsmore Tavern case. Not because the evidence was thin, because it was extensive and organized, and pointed toward a duration and a scale that the court calculated it could acknowledge only partially, without producing a public record so disturbing that it would exceed the community's capacity to absorb it and continue functioning. The court determined what it could determine. It sealed what it could not. And the Glade Creek Crossroads, which had been a known stopping point for travelers on the Wire Road corridor for at least 15 years prior to 1878, was removed from every subsequent county road map produced by Stone County between 1879 and the end of the 19th century. The Crossroads is still there. The maps never showed it again. Tell me where you are watching from. You need to understand what this road was and what it meant to stop on it. The Wire Road in the Missouri Ozarks was not a road in the engineering sense of that word. It was a corridor, a route defined by the telegraph line that the military had strung through the Ozark Hill Country in the 1850s, following the ridge lines and creek crossings that offered the most direct path between Springfield and the Arkansas line. Travelers used it because it was the most reliable through route in the southern Missouri interior, and in the 1860s and 1870s, that reliability made it the primary artery for the commercial traffic, the livestock drovers, the timber buyers, the traveling merchants, the circuit riders, the occasional family wagon that moved through Stone and Taney counties between the railhead at Springfield and the settlements further south. It was not a safe road in the way that a maintained turnpike is safe. It crossed creek bottoms that flooded without warning. It ran through cedar-choked ridges where the distance between one farm and the next could be a half-day's walk. And it passed through crossroads points, the intersections where secondary tracks met the main Wire Road corridor that had developed organically and without county planning into small commercial nodes, a store, a smithy, a tavern, a relay point where a traveler could water a horse and sleep inside a roof before the next day's miles. The Glade Creek Crossroads was one of those nodes. It sat at the point where the Wire Road crossed a seasonal creek of the same name, 11 miles south of Galena, in a wide, flat section of the corridor where the ridge lines pulled back from the road and a natural clearing had accumulated enough foot traffic to justify a structure. The Dunsmore Tavern had been there, by the earliest account that the Stone County record contains, since at least 1863. A reference in a Union Army supply dispatch from that year notes the Glade Creek Crossroads as a provisioning stop, which implies the structure was established and known by that date. The proprietor of record, in the county commercial tax ledger from 1870 onward was listed as one Clement Dunsmore, occupation, tavern keeper. The tax entries show him paying the county its assessed commercial rate without interruption from 1870 to 1878. He was a regular and unremarkable entry in the county ledger. The kind of name that appears in bureaucratic records because it is supposed to be there and disappears from notice because there is nothing in the entry that demands attention. Clement Dunsmore was 51 years old in 1878, a heavy-set man, the weight of a sedentary life behind a bar rather than outdoor labor, with hands that were soft at the palm and thick at the finger. Not the working hands of the surrounding farming community, but the hands of a man whose physical labor had been of a different and more confined character. His eyes were described by the two witnesses who gave physical accounts of him to the Stone County Sheriff as pale and very steady. The kind of steadiness that sits differently on a face than confidence does, that looks more like the absence of a concern most people carry than the presence of any particular quality. He was, by both accounts, quiet. He smiled at customers. He was attentive to the needs of travelers. He offered food and a sleeping room and water for horses, and asked, in the manner of a man providing a service, the ordinary questions. Where are you from? Where are you heading? How long have you been on the road? The questions a tavern keeper asks. The questions that in retrospect served a purpose beyond hospitality. He had no family on the property, no hired staff whose names appear in any record. He operated alone, which was noted as unusual for a business of the tavern's apparent volume by at least one of the witnesses. A regular Wire Road traveler named Silas Croft, who had stopped at the Glade Creek Crossroads on multiple occasions over several years, and who told the Stone County Sheriff that he had never seen anyone at the tavern besides Dunsmore himself, regardless of the hour or the volume of travelers present. He had not thought much of it at the time. A man running his own establishment was not an anomaly. The food was adequate. The sleeping room was dry. The price was fair. For at least 8 years before the autumn of 1878, the Dunsmore Tavern operated without generating a single entry in the Stone County Court's complaint register. No dispute, no debt claim, no formal complaint of any kind from any traveler or county resident. The silence of the record in that direction is, in retrospect, its own kind of evidence. But in 1878, it read only as the ordinary silence of a business that was causing no trouble that anyone was bringing to official attention. The first sign came in September of 1878, and it came not from a traveler on the Wire Road, but from the Glade Creek itself. The creek ran south of the tavern property before turning east toward the James River, and in the dry late summer of 1878, its water level had dropped sufficiently that the creek bed in the section immediately below the tavern property was accessible on foot. A farm boy named Otis Bream, 14 years old, whose family worked a corn plot 3/4 of a mile east of the Crossroads, was walking the creek bed looking for crawfish in the shallows when he found what he later described to his father, and his father described to the Stone County Sheriff as a smell rising from the water that was not the smell of ordinary creek mud and decay. The boy knew creek smells the way children who grow up on creek-bottom farms know them. This was different. Thicker, sweeter in the wrong direction. He followed the smell upstream to its source and found, at the base of the limestone bank directly below the tavern property, a seepage point, a place where groundwater was leaching through the limestone face into the creek, from which the smell was concentrated enough to make him step back from the bank's edge. He told his father. His father walked to the creek. His father walked to the Stone County Sheriff's office in Galena the following morning. Nobody thought too much of it at first. Livestock died on farm properties. Carcasses entered waterways through a dozen ordinary mechanisms. The smell below a rural tavern property was not, on its own, sufficient cause for formal investigation, when a full growing season's work was still pressing on every farm family in the county. The sheriff, a man named Calhoun Briggs, noted the complaint and took no immediate action. What moved him to action, 2 weeks later, was a second complaint from a different source. A wire road traveler named Arthur Pell, a livestock buyer from Springfield, who had used the Glade Creek Crossroads, stopped regularly for 3 years, and who arrived at the sheriff's office in late September of 1878 to report that a fellow traveler he had spoken with at the Dunsmore Tavern 6 weeks prior, a man named Walter Grimes, a saddle merchant heading south from Springfield, had not arrived at his stated destination and had not been seen on the wire road since. Pell had waited 6 weeks to report this, because he had assumed Grimes had altered his route or extended his schedule. When a mutual acquaintance in Springfield confirmed that Grimes had not returned home and had not communicated with his family since the date of his southward journey, Pell had ridden to Galena. Sheriff Briggs rode to the Glade Creek Crossroads on October 3, 1878. Clement Dunsmore was at the tavern. He was cooperative. He confirmed that a saddle merchant had stopped and had departed heading south, and he gave the date with a precision that Briggs noted in his initial report as slightly unusual. Most tavern keepers, when asked to recall a specific customer from 6 weeks prior, would not have the date immediately available. Dunsmore had it immediately. Briggs looked at the main building. He looked at the outbuilding. He noted a second structure at the rear of the property, lower than the outbuilding, partially below grade, with a door that faced away from the road. He asked Dunsmore what it was. Dunsmore said it was a root cellar. Briggs asked if he could look at it. Dunsmore said the key was inside and he would get it. He went inside the tavern. He did not come back out. Briggs waited for several minutes and then entered the tavern. It was empty. The back door was open. There was no sign of Dunsmore in the yard, the outbuilding, or the visible portions of the property. Briggs searched the immediate area for an hour without finding him. Then he went to the below-grade structure. The door was not locked. It had never required a key. Briggs opened it. He did not go in alone. He rode to the nearest farm, collected 2 men, and returned. The 3 of them went in together, with lanterns, in the middle of a Missouri October afternoon, and what they found in the space below the Dunsmore Tavern required the Taney County Circuit Judge and a 4-day evidence review before anyone with official authority was prepared to put a formal description of it into the public record. The space was not a root cellar. It was a natural limestone chamber that had been expanded by human labor. The marks of hand tools were visible in the walls at the points where the natural formation had been widened and deepened. The chamber was approximately 20 feet across at its widest point and extended at its southern end into a shaft that dropped vertically into the limestone beneath. The shaft was narrow, too narrow for a man of ordinary build to descend without deliberate effort, and its depth, which Briggs estimated by dropping a stone and counting, was not less than 40 feet. At its base, by the sound of the stones landing, there was water. The well that Otis Bream's nose had followed upstream to the limestone face was connected, through the natural karst drainage of the Ozark Plateau, to this shaft. Whatever entered the shaft drained through the limestone into the creek. The system was, in its geological function, entirely natural. In its practical application, it had been something else. The chamber walls, in the section between the tavern floor above and the shaft below, were fitted with iron rings set into the limestone at intervals of approximately 3 feet, in 2 parallel rows running the full circumference of the chamber. The rings were old, the iron was heavily oxidized, suggesting installation well before the period of Dunsmore's documented proprietorship. There were 12 rings in each row, 24 in total. Briggs counted them 3 times. On the floor of the chamber, the limestone had been worn smooth, in a pattern consistent with sustained and repeated use over a period of years. At the shaft's edge, the wear was deepest. The Stone County Sheriff's inventory of the chamber, filed with the Taney County Circuit Court, itemized the physical contents of the space with the flat precision of a man recording what his eyes found, without allowing his judgment to select among the details. The inventory is a public document in the Missouri State Archives. It runs to 6 pages. Its final item, listed without elaboration at the bottom of the 6th page, is personal effects of indeterminate number of individuals recovered from lower shaft access and surrounding chamber floor. Nature and quantity of said effects presented separately to court under sealed exhibit designation. The sealed exhibit has never been made public. The Taney County Circuit Court's sealed exhibit register for 1878 confirms its existence and its continued sealed status. The register entry gives it a file number and a filing date, and nothing else. Clement Dunsmore was never found. A search of Stone, Taney, Christian, and Greene counties through November of 1878 produced no confirmed sighting. A notice published in the Springfield Courier in October of 1878, requesting information on his whereabouts, generated no response that the sheriff's office documented. He does not appear in any subsequent Missouri census record. He does not appear in any criminal record in any adjacent state. He entered the Glade Creek Crossroads at a date the record cannot fix, and left it on the afternoon of October 3, 1878, through a back door that opened onto an Ozark ridgeline, and the Stone County record contains nothing after that exit. The Glade Creek Crossroads was not removed from county maps as an administrative act that anyone announced or justified. It simply stopped appearing. The 1879 Stone County Road Map, produced the year after the investigation, routes the wire road corridor through that section without marking the crossroads. Every subsequent county road document through the end of the 19th century does the same. The structure itself was demolished by county order in the spring of 1879. The limestone chamber below it was filled. The county road crew's work order, preserved in the Stone County Commissioner's records, lists the work as site remediation, Glade Creek property, fill, and grade. The shaft was not listed separately. The work order notes total fill volume at a figure that the county road crew foreman, in a private letter to his brother, that his grandson donated to the Stone County Historical Society in 1962, described as more than you would use for a root cellar and less than you would use for a cistern, and I have been thinking about that arithmetic ever since we drove away. The creek still runs through the limestone below the old Crossroads site. The wire road corridor is a recreational trail now, managed by the Mark Twain National Forest. The Crossroads clearing is visible as a widening in the trail, a flat section where the secondary track joins the main corridor, without any marker or designation of any kind. The Missouri State Archives holds the Stone County Sheriff's inventory and the sealed exhibit reference. The sealed exhibit itself is in the Taney County Circuit Court's archive. It requires a judicial order for access. No order has been sought in the period for which the archive maintains its access log. Here is what Judge Erasmus Hollowell's 4-day review of the Dunsmore Tavern property produced, and what his summary order's final clause, "cannot be determined," was designed to contain. The iron rings in the chamber walls were installed before Dunsmore's documented tenure. The wear on the chamber floor was consistent with the duration of use that Hollowell, in a private letter to the Stone County Court's presiding judge that is in the State Historical Society of Missouri's manuscript collection, estimated as not less than 15 years, and possibly considerably more. The shaft connected to a drainage system that had been moving material through the limestone into the creek for a period that predated the tavern's existence as a documented commercial operation. Whatever the Dunsmore Tavern was built over, it was built over deliberately. The structure and the function below it were not an accident of proximity. They were a design. And the design had been operating at the Glade Creek Crossroads, at the place where the wire road crossed a seasonal creek 11 miles south of Galena, in the years before Clement Dunsmore, and in the years of his documented proprietorship, serving travelers who arrived on the road, stopped for food and a sleeping room and water for their horses, and answered the ordinary questions of a man providing a service. Where are you from? Where are you heading? How long have you been on the road? Before the road received them, and the county record received nothing more. The 24 iron rings, the worn limestone, the shaft that the county filled without separately noting it, the sealed exhibit in Taney County that no judicial order has opened, the foreman's arithmetic, more than a root cellar, less than a cistern, that he spent the rest of his life thinking about. Here is the question the Dunsmore Tavern record ultimately asks, and it does not ask it gently. The tavern operated for at least 15 years, possibly more, at a known stopping point on the most traveled corridor in the southern Missouri interior. It generated 0 complaints in the Stone County Court Register for the entirety of its documented commercial life. It served travelers who were heading somewhere, who had people expecting them at the other end, who would be missed when they did not arrive. And across that span, across the wire road traffic of the 1860s and 1870s, the missing person complaints that should have accumulated in Stone and Taney County records from travelers who stopped at Glade Creek and did not continue, those complaints are not in the record in any number that corresponds to what the chamber below the tavern suggests was happening there. Which means one of two things. Either the travelers who did not leave the Glade Creek Crossroads were the kind of travelers that no one was waiting for at the other end, or someone was managing the record as carefully as they were managing the road. What do you believe was in the sealed exhibit that Judge Hollowell's court filed, and no judicial order has since opened? A quantity of physical evidence that confirmed a scale of use the court calculated the public record could not carry. Or something about the chamber and the shaft and the nature of what had been done there that even a circuit court judge in 1878 decided was better left in the dark below the limestone. Drop your answer below. If these cases, the ones with sealed exhibits and foreman's arithmetic and iron rings installed before anyone documented who put them there, are what you want to keep finding, subscribe and ring the bell. We have more. None of them are comfortable ones. The crossroads is still there. The trail widens and flattens, and the secondary track joins it, and there is no marker and no sign and nothing to tell you what that flat section of ground was built over and what drained through the limestone below it for 15 years or more while travelers stopped and answered the ordinary questions, and the creek ran south toward the James River, carrying what the shaft released into it. Stop at roadside taverns if you must, but know what questions a tavern keeper is actually asking when he asks where you are from and where you are heading and how long you have been on the road. Some questions are hospitality. Some are inventory. Keep moving. The road goes somewhere. Stay on it.